At this time, I would like to welcome our keynote speaker to the podium, Emmett T. Vaughn, Director of Diverse Business Empowerment, Exelon Corporation. In his role, Emmett provides strategic direction and oversight for over $1.1 billion of business done between Exelon and diversity certified businesses annually. He joined the company in 2005. Over $3.7 billion in his new business has been realized under Emmett's leadership. Exelon Corporation is the nation's largest nuclear power and electric utility company, in addition to being the parent company to Chicago-based ComEd, Philadelphia's PECO Energy, and Maryland's Baltimore Gas and Electric. In 2000, he spent a year as a loaned executive advisor to Reverend Jesse Jackson and the Rainbow Push Coalition on various national minority business development and civil rights projects. The foundation of his professional expertise was cultivated as a senior consultant, leading the diversity practice group for RGMA Consulting, a Chicago-based management consulting firm. Additional Fortune 500 corporate experiences include developing the supplier diversity strategies for Albertsons Incorporated and at R.R. Donnelly & Sons Company. In 2009, Emmett was presented the Lifetime Achievement Award by the U.S. Department of Commerce, Minority Business Development Agency, for contributing to regional minority business growth. He was recognized in 2011 by Minority Business News Magazine USA as one of the best supplier diversity professionals of the past decade. The same publication has recently listed him as the 75 most influential executives in supplier diversity of 2013. He earned his MBA from the Kellogg Graduate School of Management at Northwestern University and currently shares his wealth of experience as a professor in the School of Business at Chicago State University. He serves the board of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, Washington, D.C., and the board of National Utilities Diversity Council in Los Angeles, California.
I almost feel like I want to walk back up again, you know, just no, I'm not going to do that, Wayne. You know, I've got, I assure you, prepared remarks that I'm going to try to abbreviate. First of all, what a magnificent program we've had here today. Wayne Frazier and Pat Frazier and MWMCA. Let's everybody give them a round of applause. I thank you so much for this. Although I'm feeling, you know, I wonder why they bring an unknown from Chicago to keynote something in Maryland, and now I get it. This is a setup at the end of a program this long. They figured we get this guy out of town fast enough, and nobody be the wiser. So we're going to do our best to kind of, to at least ways give you something to pause and ponder. Wayne, again, thank you so very, very much. I'd also like to acknowledge in the room my management team from our offices in Philadelphia and Chicago and, of course, Baltimore, respectively. Thank you guys, as well as my other colleagues from BG&E that have come here to join us this morning. To have the opportunity to speak before such a distinguished audience, transcending so many economic agendas, is just humbling and amazing. But let me set the expectations for the next 15 minutes because, as I said, you know, this is, I recognize that there have been other great luminaries, such as Freeman Hrabowski and at the time Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown, who have taken this podium and graced the stage. So when you bring Ms. Vaughn's boy up, again from St. Louis, there must be some reason. But it leaves me with a little bit of curiosity because Wayne, who we all know to be, Michael, an astute businessman, as far as I'm concerned, you've put this 2016 event at risk. You know what I mean by doing this. So we're going to question Wayne's business, not his business acumen, but certainly this decision making. This morning, professionally, we share collectively and collaborative a spirit that celebrates the advancement of supplier diversity and minority business development. Now, what we know in this room, this is not the passive crowd. There are no passive observers here, Wayne. This is the activist crowd, the the rabble-rousers, the advocates and stakeholders that have both the pulse and the responsibility to set the direction for Maryland and the region for ensuring that opportunities for diversity-certified businesses grow and prosper. Now, unashamedly and unapologetically, I will call out my peers in corporations and large public sector sourcing organizations like no time in the previous economic development landscape of this country. It's marching orders now, folks. It's imperative that at this point we become fiercely intentional about contributing to and driving economic opportunity towards the minority business sector in this struggling economy. One would simply have to have a PhD in apathy to not have been personally affected by the imagery of anger and frustration depicted by the media in our streets just a week ago. Now, while those acts of aggression, in some cases are not reflecting the best judgment of the participants, they are indeed indicative of frustration and abject disparity, injustice and opportunity of what could be any disenfranchised urban community. Now, if you allow me a moment's digression, no doubt some of you picked up on the fact you've heard Chicago, you heard me reference St. Louis. As a BGE Exelon executive, I have grown deeply fond, if I can say it again, deeply fond of Baltimore. But it's not a new love affair. Growing up again in St. Louis, a city that's very rich in its own sports athletic history, so I am apt and remain a Cardinal fan, but I love me some old school Baltimore Orioles and Baltimore Colts. I was mad as hell as a little kid when they left Baltimore. I don't mind telling you. So we. I mean, go ahead and clap for that, because I just you have to understand that you're looking at a kid that worshiped John Mackey and Bubba Smith. Matter of fact, here, some of you you can clap for that too. I mean, you guys don't even know this one. This is one that I was raised by a daddy who was a big-time Baltimore Colts fan. And he would say, when hearing tales of Bubba Smith, you wonder if he was man or myth. He's like a hoodoo, like a hex on the field. He's a Tyrannosaurus Rex. So I promise you that I had an indoctrination early on for whatever reason. So in this fondness of this wonderful city, with a wonderful mayor, I might add, that's why it's so important right now that I express once again an honor to be allowed to do shout-outs and to enthusiastically be encouraging from this morning's mountaintops. And so many people have referenced Dr. King and his excellence earlier speeches. But see, it's important right now that we grasp the moment. We had Baltimore just last week. We had a couple months ago Ferguson. And quite frankly, we could be witnessing, if we don't, in this room, commit to making a change. This could be any other doggone place in America. If in fact, with a similar economic demographic, unless those of us that would be authoritarian, those of us with control over corporate spending and contract allocation and outreach, unless we take a different form of standing tall, brace for action, brace for responsibility to change the current flow of how contract opportunities become developmentally forward and completely inclusive of minority business and opportunities in all aspects of today's transactional economy, we're simply inviting more social unrest, more bad news footage, more of these things. And make no mistake, those of you that are still sitting in this room have a responsibility to take action, to go forward and be bold in what you do. There's a correlation that sits right now between the collapse, the historical collapse of U.S. manufacturing and industrial sectors, which has been going on since the 80s. Interestingly enough, and ironically, for those of you that are supplier diversity historians, that was the same time of what we call modern day supplier diversity was being started. This was, I think Frank evoked the name of Perrin Mitchell, Congressman, 7th District, Maryland. I'm honored, if nothing else, and shaking in my boots. I'm standing and delivering this message on supplier diversity holy ground. This is something that I don't think we talk nearly enough about or take nearly enough stock in. But what we also need to do as we sit here in the shadow of our great congressman and leader, we don't necessarily need proofs as much as we need recommitment to direction. Now, there's one thing, as an academician, I cannot get away with not referencing a book, because I do think that for a time such as this is important. There's a 1996 publication from a former University of Chicago and Harvard professor of sociology, William Julius Wilson, titled "When Work Disappears." Professor Wilson brings a stunning contrast to the reality that for the first time in the 20th century, most adults living in communities that are classified as urban inner city poor are simply not working. There should be no mystery in the ensuing plethora of social economic problems, whether they be eroding family structures, increasing crime. You know the story. But then again, I'm also saddened when many, whether you call them liberals, co-workers, are disconnecting themselves from a discussion, Wayne, that's dismissive of the concept that job creation and retention can be significant to turning this discussion around. Well, guess what? Guess where many of those jobs and opportunities will come from? But not until the so-called minority business advocates and supplier diversity professionals get busy or busier. See, minority businesses do hire disproportionate numbers of minorities. Minority businesses are known to take a few more chances with ex-offenders. Minority businesses will hire disproportionate numbers of single mothers. And so, in addition to being in better proximity to many of these so-called urban poor communities, we have got work to do, ladies and gentlemen. We've got to find ways to expand the discussion inside our respective corporations at the highest, absolute highest possible levels of leadership. I'm so proud, if I may also take a moment of selfish indulgence, to acknowledge the presence of Steve Warner, BGE Chief Operating Officer, that's here with us today. But let me say, Stephen, while you're here, and Anita Jackson, who's Calvin Butler, our fine Chief Executive Officers, Chiefs of Staff, this time next year, I am so hopeful that those of you that are representing corporations, we need to see more COOs and CSOs sitting at these tables, hearing these messages, because until we start engaging the levels of upper leadership in the organization as contract letting professionals, as contract facilitating professionals, folks, this job is beyond any more going into 2015 and 2016. This is beyond trade shows. This is beyond chicken dinners. And so at this particular juncture, until we get smarter as professionals, until we commit ourselves to demanding a seat at the strategic discussion table, until we commit ourselves as professionals to meeting at the highest levels in the C-suite, we're not going to get the attention and be game changers when it comes down to driving decisions for the growth of minority businesses. But guess what? Calling us out again, the onus is on us. We've got to get smarter. We've got to get and raise our own levels of intellect about the very businesses that we serve. We've got to get with the operational action. We've got to get with the strategic action. We've got to get with the financial action. We have got to be conversant, informed, and ready to have executive level discussions as midstream executives. We've for all too long have waited for someone else to do it. Supply diversity professionals, public sector contract administrators, we own this future. But we will not readily advocate for it by simply sitting back and waiting for other executives to engage. We have to meet them. We have to meet them in the hallways and in the boardrooms to get this done, Wayne. So if this sounds a little bit brazen or bold even, that our insistence happen, we can certainly look at it this way in the spirit of baseball season. What we need in this supply diversity movement right now is a bit of a Jackie Robinson movement or a Jackie Robinson moment. Now, this does bring me to closure, but an interesting reflection on this concept of diversity and inclusion and minority business development, because as I referenced Jackie Robinson, and we all know of the historical precedent that he set, becoming the player that is credited with integrating Major League Baseball. What was interesting and not too often discussed about this reflection was that at that time, there was no outcry or protest. Nothing was perceived as being broken about Major League Baseball. There were no marches of protest going on that preceded Jackie's integration. As a matter of fact, as a parallel truth, there was a whole Negro League of talented baseball athletes, arguably many more talented and better prepared than Jackie himself. I mean, names like Page and Campanella and Gibson come to mind. They were there. What we should concentrate on, though, in the parallel benefits, paralleling this closing to both business and athletics, is the question: how much better is our game of baseball since everyone that could play got a chance to play? Go ahead. I mean, is there really a one of us that would want to do the chronology or tell the story of contemporary modern league baseball and leave out the contributions of Jackie Robinson or Frank Robinson or Juan Marichal or Ichiro? Would you really want to tell today's baseball story without all those players having been included? Roberto Clemente, Eddie Murray, my goodness. Most importantly, though, and lost in this discussion, was the bold opportunities that created for all players to play, was that there were plenty of baseball hitting minorities. There was absolutely no Jackie Robinson shortage. What there was a Branch Rickey shortage. The fact, then, I contend that in the landscape, many of who are in this room, we've heard from today, of innovative, technology-forward, market-ready minority businesses, there's a need for us to provide opportunities to them. But we need, for those of us that return to offices with our hand on the switch, with access to our respective COOs and CSOs, we've got to find our inner Branch Rickey. We've got to stare down opposing voices and join ranks like never before as advocates, honoring, in this state in particular, supply diversity holy ground. We need minority business champions right now to join with me to capture the moment. If you believe or feel anything that I've had to say, then you walk out this door today and you walk into that hallway proclaiming yourself as a 2015 Branch Rickey. Find your own Branch Rickey moment right now. But unless we commit ourselves to leaving and leading with newly found brilliance and specific intentions for action, for winning the game, for changing the discussion levels and the discussion volume of what we need to do, inside corporations and large purchasing organizations to drive minority business growth, we've done absolutely nothing. Wayne, for this moment, for bringing me here, I humbly thank you.